In this episode of Watercolor Cards, we'll use some familiar floral illustrations and some messy watercolors to create a cheery and colorful greeting card. Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Shayda and today we are creating this card, so let me give you a supply rundown. I pick up these card and envelope sets at the dollar store. They come in all different colors, craft paper, white, cream, whatever. And then I cut a little piece of cold pressed 140-pound watercolor paper to fit on the card, and I'll glue it on later. Other than the paper, I am using a little Derwent pocket pan watercolor set, but you can use any sort of watercolors for this. I'll link this set in the description. It is a favorite of mine. And then I have a couple synthetic pointed round brushes, and I will link some of my brushes below as well. Now I've got 2 glasses of clean water. You can't really see the second glass there, but I do have sort of 1 glass for cool colors and 1 glass for warm colors. And then I just did a series all about floral illustration, and a few of you were asking about, well, how do we add watercolor or color to these florals? So I thought it'd be fun to create a card using some of the drawings and doodles that we've already done. If you want, you can go back and watch those videos. I'll link a playlist, but totally not necessary. And then you'll also want to have a pencil. I like a mechanical pencil, and you'll need a fine liner that's waterproof, like a pigment micron. These are wonderfully precise pens, and you can add watercolor paints on top of them and they won't bleed. So that's what I'll be using today, and those are linked in the description as well. Patrons of the channel, if you would like to download and print my greeting card after today's video, it will be available on Patreon. All the channel bonus content is just a couple bucks a month. Okay, let's talk flowers. I think what I will do is do this sort of larger flower for my center floral, and then I'll choose 2 of these smaller flowers to kind of border it on both sides. I'm doing a really simple design. We'll start with 1 large flower in the center and then just place some smaller ones on either side, so not a lot of planning needs to go into this. And remember, if you need a hand with drawing these flowers, they are all covered in those other floral illustration tutorials, so be sure to check those videos out. So what I've done is just what I said. I'm starting with 1 large flower in the center and then placing these smaller floral doodles on each side, so the whole design of this card comes together really easily. And in fact, the final flower that I'm doing is this one that I really like, that is really just leaves and little berries. So it is really simple and looks nice with other flowers. Now I'll tuck some larger leaves in behind all these little flowers, and then that is pretty much my design worked out. It's as simple as that. I'll take my pigment micron now and start going over everything in pen. When you draw the flowers, it's always a good idea to sort of wiggle or shake that pen just a little bit so that the petals don't look too smooth or too perfect. I'm also going to add just a little bit of line shading. You can also save that line shading for after you've added the paint, but I like to put it on now. I'll go over these scribbly little flowers here. They're 4 perfectly imperfect petals, and I just darken the center and then add some tiny little leaves. Remember, if you want more info about how to draw these flowers and many more, check out that playlist that I've linked in the video description, because you don't necessarily have to draw the same flowers that I'm drawing. You could choose any 2 or 3 or 4 and follow the same sort of formula. So at a certain point, I always find I've just got too much pencil on my design, and I like to erase everything, kind of figure out where I might need 1 or 2 more leaves or berries to make my design look really balanced. I'll go over those additional leaves and petals and whatever else in pen. And then at this point, all I really want to do is add just a little more contrast. So whether that means coloring in a few leaves or maybe adding a line or 2 or even lots of line shading, you can do that now. So these larger petals, I really want to add some very tight line shading to kind of add to that contrast. And I'll darken the flowers near the center or near their stamen. Okay, and that is my design all done. So we have this simple black and white floral card, and now we want to add some watercolor to it. So let's mix up some paints. I love this little Derwent set. It's just a really nice color selection, especially for painting flowers. You have these wonderful bright primaries, the magenta, the dark blue, the chartreuse yellow. And so I'm mixing up a peach, which is a lot of orange and white and pink with lots and lots of water. And then I'm mixing up a dark pink, and that is just a bit of this magenta with a touch of the blue added to it. And the same thing, lots and lots of water mixed in there. And then I decided to kind of play around with some shades of blue and periwinkle and teal. So I'm playing around with, I'm mixing up purple and blue with lots of white and lots of water, and you can just see me kind of adding to it, adding a little more bright blue or teal, and I kind of just went from there and decided on the color palette as I went. So I'm happy with where I'm starting. I'm going to put paint to page, and I'm using this larger synthetic brush and kind of just doing this splashy color. I want everything to be very loose, very free, and so I start with a very light color, and then I kind of add a bit more pigment into the wet area. And you can see that me doing that with the pink, and then with this peachy color, I'm just basically just splashing paint onto the page. You know, adding the color where the flowers are, where the blossoms are, but really being quite messy with it. And then I decided to use that periwinkle purpley blue to paint the leaves. Again, I am just being very messy and free. I'll let these paint colors touch so that they can kind of blend and bleed a little bit. When you are mixing up your colors, it's important to think about what colors will look good together and will blend nicely. That pink blends so beautifully into the peach, and the periwinkle blends beautifully into the dark pink. So everything's kind of working. I'm adding a little more pigment into the wet area, as I said, and I'm trying to consciously make it look messy. So I'm kind of adding some splashy areas where I'm sort of moving the paint in a way that looks messy, but I am being sort of intentional about it. So play around with it, have fun. And I think the key here is start with really light paints. So very watery or milky colors, and then add that darker pigment into the wet area. That way you're not going to look at it suddenly and say, ooh, it's really, really dark, it's really heavy-handed. So start light and go from there. A messy floral like this is a great way to practice and understand your wet into wet watercolor technique. Here you can see me adding a very watery, very, very light blue to the page, and then adding some dark blue and teal pigment into that very light wet area, and the paint just seeps out beautifully. I also added a bit of darker pink to the center of that main flower, and then here again I'm using wet into wet to add just a touch more peach to the bottom right corner to sort of balance out the warm and cool colors on this card. Okay, so now what I need to do is just simply let this dry completely before I add any more details. So there we go. It took about half an hour to dry. And at this point, I'm taking my Pigment Micron and I just want to add a hand-drawn border. Now, I find the best way to do this perfectly imperfect border is to always have the pen coming towards your body. So pull the pen towards your body for these semi-straight lines. And then if you'd like to, you can add a handwritten message to the card, but you certainly don't need to. Sometimes it's just nice to have some blank greeting cards in your drawer for whatever occasion. I just added a simple thank you message. I always seem to need thank you cards. And yeah, you might want to darken some of the lines slightly depending how heavy your watercolors were, but that's it. That is our simple floral messy watercolor card. I just decided to glue it onto a white card. I thought I was going to use craft paper, and then I decided, no, I think white looks better. better, so just used a glue stick to affix that, and that is my card all done and ready for someone special. Patrons of the channel, remember you can download and print my card. All the channel bonus content is available on Patreon for just a couple bucks a month. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you soon with a new video.